we are. This video is going to be different, a little different from all the other ones, because I'm going to be speaking. So there are a lot of things that I have wanted to share in my videos, doing the cinematic type of filmmaking that I've been doing, but the process is so time consuming that I haven't been able to get to a lot of stuff. So what I figured I could do with this is I figured I would give you a tour of the camp, the area around the camp where I'm getting some of my materials, and explain some of the things, explain some of the thought process that's going on in my head when I make certain decisions. Now, this spot right here, if you've watched all my series, you may recognize it because this was the third episode of the Primal Tendencies series. And I found this spot, I was hiking up this way, and I found this spot, and I figured this would be a good spot to set up a camp because it has some shelter. I always look for rocks. If I want to make a quick shelter, I'm going to look for, especially if it's going to be a little bit cold, then I'm looking for insulation from natural landscape, like such as these rocks. And I even have a little bit of ceiling, rock ceiling. So all I did was I made a small wall, which is slowly starting to collapse now. I made this little wall out of pieces of dried dead juniper branches that I found. And then here I collected some rocks and I made a small wall, and this is where I made my fire pit. So I had my campfire here. That kept me warm through the night, and the heat of the fire is bouncing against the rocks. And so I was actually pretty cozy in here. It was just a temporary shelter to get through the night, and then I moved on. So I'm going to grab the camera and give you a little tour here. Now, you can see that there's a lot that goes on into shooting these videos, because I move the camera around for every shot, and you notice that in so many of in every one of my scenes, there's multiple shots for the same action. So I have to repeat that action every time. I'm looking at the GoPro camera right now, but my main camera that I use is this DSLR, and I have several lenses that can be interchanged. So it's very time consuming. To give you an idea, a recent video that I did, which was catch and cook of the grasshoppers, that video I spent probably about 9 hours shooting that video. The daylight is only 12 hours maximum right now. So that was a major part of the day devoted to making that video. In reality, to catch the number of grasshoppers that I caught and to cook them and eat them would take me less than 2 hours. So we're talking about 7 hours of time that was put into production that wasn't available for actually survival skills, you know. I want people to understand how much time goes into that. And we're not even talking about editing yet. Editing takes longer than shooting. So just to give you an idea, 9 hours to make one video. A lot of my videos take me all day to do. We're going to go up here. I want to show you something. I didn't know, but there's a spring up here. I didn't know that in the beginning. I just recently learned about it. So awesome. Ah, yes. This spring has been here forever. It doesn't always have water though. It's temporary. Only after rains does it collect water. I really am fortunate and happy that I found this because it's so close to my camp. It is such a beautiful thing to have a water source much of the time that's so close to the camp. And well, I think it's pretty clean. I have drank this water several times. Haven't had a problem. I usually cook it, but that's one thing. If there's any doubt, always just boil your water if you can. It's always best and safest to just boil it. I have taken risks many times, but my immune system, I think, is pretty strong, and but there's still always a risk. But nonetheless, I'm going to have some right now. so good though. Really tastes delicious. All right. Let's continue on. These are my bricks, most of them. I bet I'm really backlit, huh? You know what, I'm gonna change the angle of this shot. Okay, I think that's better. All right. So again, these are my bricks, and I have over 300 now. Close to 100 are being used on my temporary shelter. And all these here are dry. These over here, they are in the process of drying. These two long ones here. Now, most of the bricks are one size. Unfortunately, they vary a little bit because I'm not using like a real mold. I'm using the actual bricks as molds, bricks and the flat sides of these rocks. Totally primitive. And I'm using juniper bark to separate them from the ground so that they don't stick to the ground. So it's a very basic, simple, primitive method that I'm using, but it works. These bricks are strong. They're really, really solid, and I'm really anxious that in a few days, I'm going to start building the hut. And I'm going to show you my plans and all the thinking that went through this. This was, I would lay awake at night thinking about exactly where to build the hut and what angle, where to put the chimney, where to put the fireplace, where to put the door, the windows. I spent a lot of time thinking about that and visualizing it today. So I finally came to a conclusion. I think this is concrete. I'm not going to change. It's going to be great though. I'm really looking forward to it. But these bricks, let me talk a little bit about these bricks, because I know people have been like, okay, now when are you going to start building the hut? It takes a long time to make these bricks, and I estimate that I need about 400 bricks for this project. If you recall my previous hut, I used 170 bricks. They were smaller than these though, a little bit smaller. So this one is going to be substantially bigger. And it's gonna be really awesome. I can't wait till it's done. But it takes a long time to make these. Okay, digging them by hand, mixing it with the water, taking out the stones, the large stones, and then placing the molds. I have to set up the molds individually, each brick, and then put the juniper bark down on the bottom. It takes a lot of time. And then you put it in there, the mold, you pack it in really good. I did a video where I showed in detail how I do it. So I recommend you watch that if you really want to do this. And so it takes a lot of time, and I can do approximately with everything, including the digging and then the sanding and all the tending that I do to them. I make about 3 bricks an hour. But it's important to do them properly. If I rush it, if I don't pack it in really good, they're going to be weaker. They're not going to hold as much heat. There's a lot of reasons to put the extra effort into it. So I have over 300 bricks now, approximately 315, I believe, or 310 actually. Now I'm starting to make some that are of a special size for certain things. For example, the top of the door. The entrance is going to be about this wide, just enough for an average person to get through. And so when I get to the top, I need a very long brick to go up there. Also for the fireplace, I'm going to have an opening that's going to be about this wide, and I'm going to need long bricks on top of that. These long ones right here are actually the ones that are going to go on top of the fireplace. They're still drying. I have them on this end like this because that way the weight will help to compact them and make them solid so that they don't break. The problem with doing long bricks like this is that they have a tendency to crack in the middle. So this is what I've learned from experience, and this has worked out well. What else? I have a lot of half bricks because as you can imagine, the bricks are laid, something like you have like 2 bricks, and then the next layer is going to go overlapping as such. So when you get to the end of like a doorway, for example, I need a half brick to finish that. So a lot of them happened naturally. Actually, all the half bricks happened naturally by bricks that cracked during the drawing process. There's not a lot, and I'm sure I'm going to have to make a few more half bricks. But that's what those are used for. And then here I've got some bricks drying. Over here, I have very large bricks. This is for the top of the fireplace. These bricks I have covered with juniper bark right now so they don't dry too fast, because what happens, if you can think about this, the bricks when they're wet and you have a big mass of mud, right? Well, the sun beating on the surface, right? So the top tends to dry faster. As a result, the bottom is still really wet and soft. And as moisture is coming out of the top, it's going to shrink. And so I do add shredded juniper bark to help prevent shrinkage. But nonetheless, when it is very hot and sunny, then the surface will dry quicker. So in order to slow down the drying process a little bit, I cover it with juniper bark, and then that helps to prevent cracking. Let me show you these big bricks that I'm doing. These I could take the juniper bark off now because the sun is going away. But these again are going to go on top of the fireplace. So because it's going to be like a rocket stove type of design, so if you can imagine, the flames are going to be in the fireplace here, and then the chamber of bricks is going to direct the exhaust out this way, and then outside and up a chimney. So this one is the one that seemed to be kind of cracking. I think, yeah, it has hopefully it doesn't go all the way through. But while it's still wet, I can add some moisture here. Even some spit will help. And just get a little wet and then kind of compact it back in. Now this one may also benefit if I could pick it up and put it on end so that the weight will cause it to compact even more. Excuse the wind. This afternoon is very windy. That is sometimes an issue here for sound. But these bricks are, again, if you can imagine this and this together, that's going to be the top of the fireplace. So this one looking good. This one I did a couple days ago, and it doesn't have any cracks. But this one, on the other hand, has a little one. But hopefully it won't be severe enough that it's going to cause it to break. Now, I have a large hole over here. It looks like a swimming pool, but there's no water in it, at least not now. But when it rains, it will get some water. This is a house. Like all this dirt right here has produced over 300 bricks that can be used to make a small house. That's a very amazing concept if you really think about it. I've done it in steps because it just makes it easier to get it in and out, but it's taking the shape of like a jacuzzi or a small swimming pool. It's pretty cool. Now there's different areas where I've come across clay, and most recently was right down here. I found a lot of good clay, and I call this good clay because there's clay all over in here, but there's certain pockets where it's more pure, where it has less stones or organic matter or whatever. and so it produces a better quality clay for making pottery. I've made some small pieces. I need to make a kiln so I can really go into making a lot of pottery. Pottery is going to be so important to me. I can just imagine what the native peoples thousands of years ago, how much they relied on pottery. There's so much you can make and do with it. For instance, here's a really good example. Now I've made some baskets and I've collected quite a bit of produce, Palo Verde seeds and mesquite, juniper berries. Those are very common here and very abundant. Now, if I wanted to make flour out of those, I don't have a place to store the flour. So if I make jars, small clay jars, I can store the flour in those. And so it's gonna really enhance the lifestyle. So this is close to 1 meter deep, almost 1 meter deep right now. I don't know if I'm gonna go deeper. It's getting harder and harder the deeper I go. There's a lot of rock down here. The top 2 inches I would consider calling topsoil, but it really consists mostly of just bits of bark and gravel and dead leaves and things like that. And right now there has been a little bit of rain in the recent last week, so it's actually pretty easy to dig now, and so that's really nice. So I've been able to shape this pretty good using this rib. This rib is actually the greatest digging tool. This one is a little bit stronger. It's not as brittle. It doesn't break as easy as the other one I was using. And so this is I can quite quickly dig up enough dirt to make a brick. And stones like this, I throw them out. We don't use those. And you can see here, by prying out that stone, I actually broke some of this bone. So it's something that's not going to last a long time. I've already used a couple. I think this is my second rib that I'm using to dig with. But it is a good tool, and I'm anxious to experiment and make some more tools. A lot of people have commented, "Why don't you make this? Why don't you make an axe? Why don't you do this?" A lot of it is because I don't have a lot of time to experiment. I've got to make these bricks. I got to get this done, and if I get a proper tool, it's gonna certainly help. It's going to make tasks faster and easier and more efficient. I totally understand that, but I've got to first make the tool, and making it is sometimes very time consuming. Now, if I were to do an axe, I got to find the proper stone for that, and I've been using stones here, and I've been breaking them, just using my hand to cut things. So I don't want to make an axe with a handle, put all that time and effort into doing it, and then swing it at a log and watch it shatter. It's not. That's a worse use of my time. So I want to be sure that I have the proper materials before I make some of these tools. But I'm going to have more time for that after I get the hut built, because that's been very time consuming. Now, there's been a lot of comments about how I can use this pit, refrigeration. Some people suggested that I actually build the hut like on top of it and stuff, but that isn't a good idea, because this will collect water when it rains. Water runs down from here. This is kind of a channel. It runs right down into here. This collects a lot of water, so that can be a good thing for having water, but it's not a good place to live. Another thing was refrigeration. I'm going to explore that idea. Perhaps if I dig under this earth and make like a small cave, I can probably keep it cool, fairly cool, during the summer months. The summer gets very hot here. Temperatures usually 100 degrees or more every day. That was brutal. It was so difficult to do any kind of work during the summer because of the intense heat. Now we're in fall. It's getting cold, actually getting cold at night. So I'm really in a hurry to get this hut built, because when winter comes, it's going to be very cold. So, but yeah, refrigeration could work here. I'm going to explore that idea later. I'm also intending to use this as a place, because there is clay, I want to use this as like a workshop area. So I've got these, the way I have it in steps, it makes it comfortable where I can sit and I can comfortably work. Say I have some clay, like I'll make a pot and I'll put my powdered clay in there, and I can sift clay with my basket, and as you've seen in previous videos, and I can work on clay and make my products right here. I can work on anything here when I get a bunch of yucca corded or yucca fibers, and I'm going to be working on making some yucca stuff here. I intend to put a roof over this with juniper bark or maybe just branches, and that will keep it shady, and will keep it shady during the summer and also protect me when it rains. So that is the story about this pit, swimming pool, jacuzzi, whatever you want to call it. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get bigger. Because after I make this hut, I'm going to make more projects with bricks. So it's going to continue growing, getting larger, maybe a little bit deeper, and it's going to go back this way more. Or maybe I'll go this way. I don't know. It's a cool thing about this is there's just so much freedom, creative freedom. I can choose where I want to dig, how deep I want to dig, what I want to use the dirt for. You can just, it's just such a creative freedom to just let your creative ideas just flow. Of course, you're limited on materials, just the materials that are available here. Hear that? It's absolute silence. That's what I love about this place. I love this time of day when the sun is going down, the shadows are getting longer. That mountain, I love looking at that mountain. It is so beautiful. And I can hear the crickets coming out already. But it's so quiet. There's no wind right now. There's moments where it's super windy and then it's pure silence. I really thrive in that silence. Of course, the sound of flies. Wow. All right. I've got a lot more to show you. Let's go. Set the camera up here. And now we got the sound. Recording. Showing some food. Here's my gear. You never see this primitive camera gear before, but I have two boxes. This box has my audio gear as well as my GoPro. And in here, this is where I've got all the big stuff. This is the camera. The DSLR goes in here. I have this huge, massive lens that I recently got, and I've used it not very many times. It takes a lot of time to get this set up, but it's, what is it? 150 millimeter to 600 millimeter. So this is for very special shots, and again, I don't use it that much because it takes so much time to get set up. But I had the idea of getting great shots of the moon, the sun, and wildlife. So hopefully I'll get some shots of some beautiful wildlife here in the future. I've seen deer, but I haven't been able to capture on my camera because you really have to be ready, because when they see you, they don't stick around very long. They're gone. So I haven't caught a deer on camera, nor have I caught a live rabbit on camera. I saw one actually this morning as I was taking a walk. They too, they're very quick. And I hear coyotes about every morning and every evening. Usually just before the sun comes up and then around sunset. I hear them far off in the distance though. So I think I've seen coyote tracks here. But they don't come around very often.
And I have a few other lenses. I have a very wide angle lens here, and it's a fisheye. I have a 50 millimeter and a 100 millimeter. And so this is a lot of stuff to carry. I have two tripods. One is holding that camera. The other one is holding the sound equipment. Okay. The reason I did that was to be able to get the microphone closer to what I'm doing for better sound. Sound is very important to me. And I carry all this in my backpack. Aside from this camera gear, it has just a few other essential and emergency items. No, I do not carry a first aid kit. And I should. I agree. I have to put something together. I used to many years ago, but then I never used it. So I stopped carrying it because it was just extra bulk, I felt. I have some food here. Palo Verde, I think, is one of the most important survival foods in this area. These are Palo Verde pods, and they're dry, and they have inside these little seeds, which are, at this point, they're dry, so I'm not going to eat them as they are because it's like eating a stone. They're so hard. But these guys are a very good food. It's basically beans. Beans are very nutritious. Palo Verde is very nutritious, and I find it to be very satisfying and filling. And these little tiny seeds, when you cook them, they really swell up a lot, probably 5 or 6 times the size when they're dry. I've got a couple baskets. The season is finishing on those. I can maybe get a little bit more from the trees, but they grow down the mountain further. But when they're green, as you may have seen in my videos, they are really delicious and a joy to eat. It's like eating peas. You saw when I made this little basket to collect mesquite. The mesquite, I love mesquite, and it is it's tasty. Supposedly you could grind it down into a flour. I haven't had success with that because it has the seed and the skin. It's hard to separate from the flour, so I find the best way to eat them is just chew on them, and you can taste the sweetness. You suck on it, it's good, and then you spit out the seeds and the skin. Now the seeds, if you remove the shell, they can be eaten and they taste good, but it's so tiny. The seeds are so small, and you get so little nourishment out of them for so much work. That's the problem. But I've got another basket of them here. I still have a few. I'm down to one right now. Tuna, as it's known in Spanish, the prickly pear fruit. I really love these. Sadly, they are ending. The hillside was full of them. Actually, all the mountains all around here. On my way to the stream, I found so many of these, and I wish I could have just collected them all and saved them all. But unfortunately, no. Everything's perishable out here. So, fortunately, mesquite can be stored for a long time, and so that's nice and sweet. The problem, however, is there was an infestation. They got little bugs in them, and they hatched and turned into flies and left little holes in it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the taste. I think they're just fine to eat, even with the holes from where the insects infested them. So that is, and you see how I have this hanging? It's up above the ground, just because there's rats around here. There's mice. I've seen them. There's birds. They keep their distance away from me, but there's a lot of birds around here, and I don't know what else might come around and visit and eat my food. So I think it's a good idea to keep it stored away. One of the benefits of Palo Verde is it doesn't get infested with nothing. It's a great food to store. At least so far, I've had no problem. Nothing wants to get into this. Yes, up here I have juniper berries. I'm under a juniper tree at this very moment. Juniper trees are all over here, and they produce these berries which are kind of, they have a hint of sweetness. They're mostly dry, but they are a good survival food, and they store forever. You can store these for so long. There's that one seed, some of them have 2 seeds inside. I just chew them and I spit out the seed. First, let me spit out the mesquite. Okay, got out the mesquite seed and skin, and then juniper berries, I do the same thing. Chew on them. It's kind of a minty flavor, I guess you could call it. Minty, pine, a little sweetness. I like them. I snack on them all the time. Spit out the seeds, and there you go. Another thing to do, these can be ground down into flour. And I have done that, and I'm looking forward to getting some jars, making a bunch of flour. You grind it down, and you can mix it in with all kinds of other foods that you're preparing. So I'm really looking forward to next year, because I'm going to get into the foods a lot more. When I have the proper tools, I'm going to be making clay kitchen utensils, and it's going to be really, really awesome. And right over here, I have my bone collection. And so you probably saw the video when I collected these bones here from the cow carcass. There's a lot more still to collect, but I did one trip and I got these. So again, the ribs are proving to be pretty good digging tools. So I got several of those. The skull, which will probably serve as a decoration or something, I don't know. I did forget to mention that I have this bag. Remember this bag? I made this bag last year or earlier this year, I don't remember, but it's full of Palo Verde seeds, and I want to make some more bags like this. They're very convenient to carry for collecting. The other day, a couple days ago, I was out walking and I found a very old antler. It is not in very good condition. It's quite weathered, but it's pretty hard still. So I don't know. I don't know what I could use it for. At least a decoration for now. Perhaps it could be ground down into something. I don't know. So again, I always appreciate everyone's ideas. A lot of you have, everyone has different skills, different experiences, and different knowledge, and that has just been one of the greatest things, to be able to learn from your experiences and your ideas. Several of them I have used, and it has influenced me, and I'm grateful for that. So any ideas to do with an old antler that's quite deteriorated, I'm more than happy to consider. Here I have some bark from the wonderful juniper tree. This is a mat that I made. I have another one underneath. Now these can work as mats. This can be kind of nice to just put on the floor, so you walk around. So I'll be able to walk around in my hut barefoot, or laying them out here on the dirt. You could put them in a line, and it's kind of like a carpet. And I think these will last quite a while. But the actual reason that I'm making these right now, is something more urgent and more important, is for covering the roof of the hut. So this is something new for me. I don't know how well it's all going to work, but I'll show you why I'm doing this woven mat design as part of the roof process. The main reason is just because it's really neat. This will be the first layer. So if you can imagine having branches to basically to form the shape of the roof, and then these will just go on top. And so obviously that's not going to keep the rain out, right? Because the rain can clearly go right through. I can see right through it. But what it will do is it will provide a nice layer of foundation layer for me to lay just straight bark, layers of bark on top of this. Does that make sense? So that is the idea I have to make the roof. I did that on half of the shelter is made this way, where I have a woven layer and then I put layers of bark on top of it, and it works pretty good. There's a few little leaks, but I just need more bark in order to cover those. And so that's my idea for making the roof. If you have any, I've thought a lot about the roof, and it's the scariest thing about the whole project. Making the walls of the bricks is easy. I feel totally comfortable with that. But making the roof has been a little stressful just thinking about it. So this is what I have in mind, and I think it'll work. And there's ways, I'm sure, to make an even better roof. I'm not going to do ceramic tiles. I'm not going to do clay tiles because it would be so heavy. Plus, it would take an awful long time to make that many clay tiles. So I'm not even considering that idea. That I would do for a very small project, but not for the entire roof where I'm going to need hundreds of clay tiles. Okay, I want to talk about this big tree here, and I want to talk about where I was considering putting the hut and where I decided that I'm going to put it.
All right, so one of my biggest concerns regarding where to put the hut is this tree. Now this tree, this was a juniper. It still is a juniper, but it's dead. It was a big juniper tree, and it was struck by lightning. It's burnt out here and over on that side. So my concern about this tree, I love it. It's so cool. It's beautiful. It's it's almost like a part of the decoration of the landscape. It's really neat. I love it. But the problem is, as all trees do, eventually one day it is going to fall. Now, where is it going to fall? What direction? Or is it going to fall in pieces? Like, for example, this, I can probably if I rock this enough, I can probably bring this part of the tree down. These branches, a lot of them are brittle. I use this for firewood and for the roofing of the hut. So the problem is, I don't want to take it down, and I really can't take it down. This thing is too big. It's huge. I thought about trying to burn it down. That could be risky though. I don't want to take that chance. So what am I going to do with this big juniper? I was thinking about putting the hut over there. And after walking around this tree, I came to the conclusion that most of the weight is on this side here. So when it does finally fall, it's probably going to go that way. The earth is at a slope here, and so this is going down slope. So it seems like it's going to go that way. This branch is going to go this way. So that has been that was a big issue concerning where to put the hut. Because for a time I was planning to put it over there. And then I decided, because if I don't remove this tree, I was going to remove the tree. That was my plan. But then I started working on it. And I'm like, no, this is not going to move that easy. So the tree is going to stay. And I am going to take my chances and bet that it's going to fall, not that way, but it's going to fall that way. So with that in mind, I have decided that I will put the hut right there where the shelter is. And I spent all morning really planning that out. And I think I have it drawn out now exactly where the walls are going to go. You want to see that? All right. All right, this is the fastest video I ever shot. We're almost done. Let me show you the inside of this beautiful shelter. Okay. All right, there's approximately 100 bricks, I think a little less. But as you can see, all I did was stack them with dirt and juniper bark in between them, because that way I can remove them for when I build the actual hut. The roof, now this is what I was talking about the roof before. You see how right here I have the woven juniper bark, and you see how it's very nice, a nice finish, nice and smooth. And then over here I just piled layers of bark on it, and you can see it's just not quite as neat. It's very shaggy, looks very shaggy and unkept. So that's why I decided I'm going to put woven juniper bark on this part, and then on over that will be just layers of bark. Now, talking about that bark, let me go out here again, because I thought that just laying bark on the roof would be ineffective, in that it would blow away with the wind. Now, it's been windy all day and the bark is all still here. So the bark stays on quite well. I'm very impressed with that. And it sheds water quite well. I think it's going to be good insulation too. So I think I made a good choice by using juniper bark. I used cattail leaves on my other hut, and it has rather poor insulation. The juniper bark is more dense, and so I think it's going to hold in heat a lot better. So we're going to find out when I actually make the hut. Let's put this GoPro camera back in here. Alrighty. Alright, we'll leave that there. Okay, you see I've got a wood pile here. I use the bricks to hold that together. In here, I shared a little bit of this in a recent video. In this box, it originally contained food when I started this journey, and then I ate all the food. Oops, I gotta be careful because it has the feathers. Those little feathers are in here. I don't want to take anything out because the feathers are going to fly away. But it has the feathers, and it also has the rabbit skin. That rabbit skin from the rabbit that I found. That is in here, as well as some cordage. There may be a few other things. I'm not quite sure. And so this is just to keep like delicate items that could otherwise be disappear or get damaged. For instance, when I butchered the rabbit that I cooked, I saved the bones and I left the bones out here. Well, they were gone real quick. Something came and took the bones away. I've had that happen with a number of things, a few things. Unless I misplaced it, but I can't find the tail from the cow. I had to hear it was up in the tree, but I think a rat probably got it. So that's unfortunate, but that's what happens out here. So that's another reason why I need to make containers to store things. It's going to be very beneficial. Let's talk a little bit about my kitchen here. It's very simple. I've got my cooking pot here, and right now I have a plate on here that I can cook on, but I can also put my pot here, and I keep the flames going underneath, and I just burn the flames underneath the pot, and I can cook my beans, I can boil water. It's works out pretty good. It takes a little while to get the water to boil because this pot is very thick. There's a few other things in here. This is from the rabbit, 2 feet and the tail.
I just tied them onto a piece of yucca cordage and they hang here. I also have some clay items that I need to fire. There's some here. There's a piece that I just made. I made this one yesterday. This is super primitive. Like I said, the ground is a little wet right now, so I wasn't able to sift it into a fine powder. So I just took a handful of clay that I dug out of the earth, and using my fingers, I removed most of the larger stones, and then I just formed this little tiny cup. It's very thick, and it's drying, and then I'm going to fire it up here, and hopefully tomorrow. So that is another piece of pottery here. My mat, I have my juniper mat still. It's falling apart, and so but I'm just waiting until I finish the hut to replace it. And I'm going to use the bark from this. It's also going to go on the roof. It's going to be like, I'm going to put the woven mat first, and then I'm going to put a layer of just kind of fine bark, tore up bark like this, and then bigger pieces that would be kind of like tiles that are going to go layered in layers over that all the way to the top of the roof. My deer skin, this buckskin is really great. It really makes the bed so much more comfortable, and it helps keep me warm. It helps to trap heat from the fire, and again, it's starting to get cold now, so I am in a bit of a hurry to get this hut built. I have a few other things. Here's my basket, and oh my gosh, yep, fire kit. I collected this spindle a couple days ago. It's from a type of yucca. I still have this blade. I call it the Yucca Slayer. This baby I made before I started this trip, and it has endured all these months and is in still good shape. It's stained from the prickly pear juice from so many that I cut open, but it's been a good tool, a good cutting tool for light cutting jobs. And then, oh my, I still have these containers that I brought from the beginning. These are made out of yucca stalks, and they have mostly, some of them had some food, but now they have like pieces of cordage, or they have fire sticks, spindles for bow drill. I have in this one, I have this is the bearing block. It's a stone with a nice natural divot. I assume it's natural, but maybe natives made this. I don't know. But anyways, I use that to bear down on the spindle when doing the bow drill, and it works really well. I have another tool here. This stone I use for making the notches in my hearth board for making the bow drill or hand drill, either way. This container contains a few things. This one just contains pieces of you call punk wood. I still have some from a yucca stalk, and I also recently acquired some from a juniper. This is punk wood from a juniper. It's rotted, and so it becomes very spongy, and I use that for to help starting a fire. When I get an ember, I put the ember on here. I touch it to a small piece, and it'll transfer the ember. That way I have two embers, and it makes a better ember that will ignite better when I put it into the tinder bundle, which I usually make out of juniper bark. This one just has spindles and some short spindles for the bow drill. So I keep these in a nice dry place in here. That's good. The nighttime is so spectacular. Some nights I see a lot of shooting stars. The North Star is always right there. The Big Dipper goes around it. And I can tell what time of year it is by the position of the Big Dipper. Because in the springtime, the Big Dipper starts up there. And then it comes around. When I say starts, that means at sunset, the Big Dipper is over there. And then in summer, the Big Dipper is over there. And then the fall, Big Dipper is over there. And then in the winter, the Big Dipper will be hidden behind the mountain at sunset. And so that is, that's a way that I would use to be able to tell how close it was to the next morning by the position of the Big Dipper. There's that silence again. I can hear the wind in the distance. The sun's going to go down in about half an hour, so I've got to wrap this up. The very last thing that I'm going to share is where I plan to put the new hut. One of the issues here is that it's on a slope. This whole hill is a slope. But this is a nice, fair, it's almost flat. It's not that much of a slope. And the nice thing is that there was nothing growing here, aside from a little bit of grass, some small, very short vegetation. The ground here is very hard. And so that is ideal for a foundation, to set the foundation for the hut. Also, there doesn't seem to be much runoff. Like when it rains, the water seems to run that way much more than this way. So what I am, to counter the effects of rain and to keep rain out, I'm going to have a roof, but I'm also going to have a ditch, a drainage ditch around the upper side of the hut to direct water away from it. Also, I'm going to raise this ground here about 6 inches from here, and then it's going to level, it's going to join over there. So if you can imagine this shelter being moved to here, I have outlined where the walls of the hut are going to be. Again, it's not going to be huge. I can't take the risk of trying to make something too big. Plus, I need a lot more bricks. I don't have the time to do that. And also, another concern about building a large structure is heating it, because the sun's going down now. It's starting to get cold. I need to cover up, get the fire going to stay warm. And so a larger structure requires a lot more heat to keep it warm inside. So keeping it kind of small, but I'm going to have plenty of room. There's going to be room for 4 people to sleep in here. And I'm going to be able to stretch out and have plenty of headroom, plenty of room by my feet. It's going to be great. I'm going to have plenty of room to store my food, to cook, everything. It's going to be, and to work on projects inside the hut. Okay, now I mentioned I'm going to need about 400 bricks. That's going to make the walls of the hut, as well as the fireplace and the chimney. It is going to probably be, the walls are going to be about 5 feet high. And you say, well, isn't that a little small? Because I'm clearly taller than 5 feet. This right here is about 4 feet, so 5 is going to be about here. And it's just going to be 5 feet at the walls. But then the roof is going to go like this, cone shaped. It's going to be cone shaped like that. So therefore, when you come in, I'll be able to stand up, have plenty of room. It'll probably be 9 feet to the top, possibly. It'd be 8 to 9 feet. So plenty of headroom, plenty of room. I'll be able to put my arms up even. So you can clearly see, again, I've marked with these rocks where the walls are going to go. So on this side, it follows this way, and it goes all the way to here. Right into here, basically where the buckskin. This marks the boundary right here. So it's going to be circular or oval. I'm not going to make it exact, but it's going to be approximately a circle. It's going to go around like this. The fireplace will be right here. This is where the fireplace is going to go. And it's going to be it's going to be pretty big. So it's going to produce a lot of heat. And then the exhaust is going to be channeled this way and then out here. And then the chimney will be here. Chimney's going to rise above the roof. and I'll have a clay cover on it. It'll be fired clay so that the rain won't penetrate that, and it'll direct the water off of the chimney. And then this is where the door is going to be. And I really wanted to put the door here because when I lay down in this shelter, I love looking at that mountain. I just lay there and I just look at the mountain. At this time of day, it is so beautiful to see those long shadows and just watch the light slowly fade. And then the stars start to appear. And like I said, the North Star will be there and the Big Dipper will be there. It's gorgeous. So I want to have that view. I don't want to lose that view. So the door will be right here. I can lay here, have the door open, boom, and look at that view. And then I decided I'm going to put 4 windows. They're going to be small windows, probably about that big. But I'm going to put 4 of them. And they're each going to point in a different direction. We're going to have one that's going to point north. I will line it up with a North Star. The opposite end will have the south window, and then an east window and a west window. So I'll be able to watch the sunrise to the east through the window and the sunset to the west through the window. That is my plan. There's a lot more details. This video is way too long. At first I anticipated it would be a 10-minute video, but it's obviously much longer than that. So I apologize for the length of it, but I hope this clears up some questions or doubts. Hopefully I answer some questions. I'm sure there's going to be more questions now than before though. So watch the videos. I'm going to try to detail as much as I can the process of making the hut, of building it. I'm really going to have to work on it fast. And I estimate, like I mentioned, I can make about 3 bricks an hour. I'm probably going to be able to lay to place about 6, 8. I'm thinking probably 8 bricks an hour I'll be able to lay, and I've got 400 bricks to lay. And then they need some time to dry. And then the roof is going to take a long time. Making the mat, what I made this morning, just to make one mat, it didn't take that long, probably about an hour. I've found 2 dead junipers, one over there and one up that way. And they're full of bark, and the trees are already dead. And so I can just take all the bark from them. So I have an abundance of bark. So there's a lot more I wanted to share in this video, but it's been long enough. The sun is going down, and so just stay tuned for the next episode of Primal Tendencies.